footage at one of these with a radio interview from South Africa in 1963, which is quite interesting. Then we've got some Lotus Cortina footage, which I'm sure you will all be pleased about. We've got some extracts from a film called Year of the Cortina, and we've also got some footage from the 1964 Sebring 3 Hours, which I don't think many of you would have seen. Then we've got some Tasman footage to finish off. The Tasman footage is actually it was actually filmed by Alec Milton, who was the Alfa Romeo dealer in Australia. So if you're wondering why there's lots of shots of Frank Gardner in the Alfa powered cars, that's why. But it's a lovely piece of this historical footage. The only thing I would say is that the film is 40 years old and the sound quality is a little bit dicky, so it's not us. It's like that. That's all we've been able to salvage. I think that's pretty much it. Without further ado, I shall move out to the way of the screen and off we go. Thanks a lot.
He had become world champion, one of the most gifted drivers ever to take the tracks. His name, Jim Clark. Clark came to be noticed at the wheel of a D-type Jaguar, driving for a team called Border Reavers. When the D-type became less competitive, the team ordered the first production version of Colin Chapman's latest stunner, the Coventry Climax fiberglass monocoque Lotus Elite. The Elite was entered for the 1959 24-hour race, but when Lotus failed to deliver it in time, Colin Chapman lent the team a green Team Lotus example, plus a driver, John Witney. The pair finished 10th overall. It would have been 7th were it not for a total of 2.5 hours spent in the pits. It was the year in which Roy Salvadori and Carol Shelby gave Aston Martin the win for which they'd been trying so hard for so long. But Clark's performance in the Elite had not gone unnoticed at Lotus, and for 1960 he was drafted into the Lotus team. Clark and Chapman were to form a unique partnership which to last 8 supremely successful years. Jim was signed up by Aston Martin to drive their front engine, way behind schedule and now out-of-date Formula 1 car, and by Lotus to drive Formula 2 and Formula Junior, where Jim won 11 races in the Lotus AG. Meanwhile,
then Terry, Bob Dance,
helped me get started in racing and persuaded Colin Chapman that I should have one of the pre-production Lotus Elites, or I just have a Lotus 6 when I started. And in my third race, it was the Daily Express Silverstone meeting, which was a very big race for me. It was just my third race outside the sort of little club meetings. And I found myself on the grid with a rather illustrious group of people. Sterling Moss was in pole position in a Jaguar, and then there was Roy Salvadori, and then there was Jack Sears in a Austin Healey. And then there was myself and Colin Chapman in Lotus Elites. And I always remember feeling quite out of place there because all these other people were famous, and I was completely was Sterling Moss coming across to me and saying, "Who are you?" And right then I didn't know. And so anyway, I had a very good race actually with Colin, and we swapped places a number of times during the race, and it was all pretty close until he did a sort of typical Colin Chapman and out-fumbled me on the last corner and won the race. But apparently my driving pleased him a little bit, because about 2 weeks later I was in my farm office and the secretary came through and said that Mr. Chapman wants to talk to you. Well, it was Mr. Chapman who was a seed salesman. And so I said, "Oh, for God's sake, I don't want to speak to him again." And she said, she came back again, she said, "I think it's a different Mr. Chapman, it's a Mr. Chapman from Lotus." So I fell over my desk and back on the phone, and it was Colin, and he said, "Would you like to drive at Le Mans?" Well, you know, I hadn't been racing. My first race had been August the previous year, and here we were in June. The next year I hadn't been racing for even a year yet. I was being asked to drive at Le Mans. So it was an extraordinary experience for me. So, of course, I accepted and ended up with Jimmy in the race. But I want to go back to my story about Jimmy in particular, and it involves Alan Stacey. Some of you may know Alan Stacey lost a leg when he was 16, and actually he was an athlete, he was a runner, and he lost a leg in a motorcycle accident and decided, well, what could you do in competition without a leg? So he went motor racing, and he was extremely good. And but he just sort of completely ignored his leg. I mean, he walked normally, and lots of people didn't even know he had a wooden leg. And this was quite important because, you know, at that time he got tested medically every now and again, and so it was quite convincing, and a lot of people who tested him didn't know he had a wooden leg still. He would cross his legs the same way twice when they did that tap your knee, you know. See? I just remember there was one time he was dancing, and he stood on another guy's toe, and the guy was very upset. As you can imagine, being stood on that wooden leg. So this guy stamped on Alan's foot, and of course Alan didn't.
What a partnership, and that's why we're here today. Yep, again, this was at Eynsham Park. Colin encouraging Jimmy, I think, to visit on the local bank, but I'll also lose and ask first. Any way to get money, but that's the way we did it. In the 49, this was Jimmy's last race in the UK. And there is actually an old poster version of this office that old Jarrett is doing apparently. Right, next. Right, there we go.
I asked if he could pass and get in front and get away to half a dozen laps, and this chap said yes, that was okay.